Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to speak on Bill 2, the Responsible Energy Development Act. Madam Speaker, it is very important for members of this Assembly to engage in debate in order to dig deeper into this legislation and ensure what is presented on paper, the intent of this bill, translates into sound policy when it is put into practice. It is of special interest and special concern and utmost desire to be involved to me because of the makeup of Cypress Medicine Hat. My constituency, up until the royalty review and the change in the natural gas pricing, I represent the south part of Medicine Hat, approximately a third, and the town of Redcliffe was huge in the natural gas business. Exploratory companies, we had head office companies and service companies, providing a lot of jobs, a lot of people to town, a lot of income, a lot of royalties for our citizens, providing services, and a lot of jobs for our economy. Baseball is one of my favorite things, and I coached a baseball team about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was talking to one of the parents on the baseball team who said from his small town in northern Saskatchewan, his entire graduating class of 16 people lived in the Medicine Hat area working in our natural gas industry. That's how important that was to our industry and our job growth. We also have a lot of these companies are second and third generation oil and gas companies. They are companies that have taken pride in our community, taken pride in supporting our charities, taken pride in paying our taxes, taking pride in adding to the quality of our life. Many of these people have told me that the fact that Alberta at times is considered one of the very worst jurisdictions for doing the business costs them money, costs them time, costs them enjoyment, and they would like to move towards a single regulator if it can be done right. Cypress Medicine Hat is also a constituency about 80 miles by 80 miles. Runs from the Alberta-Saskatchewan U.S. border, north along the Saskatchewan border, about 80 miles, to where the South Saskatchewan River crosses the Alberta-Saskatchewan border, about 15 or 20 miles north of a little town called Hilda. From Medicine Hat, it runs straight, or from the Saskatchewan border through Medicine Hat, it will run straight west, past Bow Island, past Burdett, almost to Grassy Lake, somewhere around 80 miles by 80 miles. When we go south to the American border from there, we get into some of our ranches that are sixth-generation ranchers, where the people are now raising their children and their grandchildren. Property rights, this way of life, is absolutely crucial to them. I know of some instances of families where they provide many jobs, lots of opportunities, and great quality of life. And in the campaign process, in the time leading up to the actual campaign period, when the writ was dropped, of course, there was 3 or 4 town hall meetings that I went to. And it was amazing. Amazing the involvement, the interest that the rural people have in politics, and amazing the interest and the involvement that they wanted to talk to property rights. All prepared to handle things in a fair manner, but also wanted to be treated fairly themselves, wanted to be given the opportunity to have due process if necessary, access to the Expropriation Act if really necessary, and treated openly and transparently, especially when it came to the resale of situations like grazing leases and those kind of things. My background, I sold real estate for 26 years, and it was so, and very novice at politics, but it was so refreshing to me when I was out in these town halls, meeting all these rural people, and how interested they were, and how willing they were, and how willing they were to contribute, with their time, their ideas, and in some cases their money. And yes, a lot of times it was property rights. Very important, this property rights, this merger with the oil and gas industry. It's also very interesting in Cypress Medicine Hat now too, because we're sort of on a collision course with the Environment, Land Use Planning, and Bill 36. Our RAC plan, I think, came out a week or two ago, or our RAC map, I guess, anyway. And I see that the government is planning some meetings around the south part of the province and around the province to discuss this plan. Cypress Medicine Hat people are very, very concerned. The urban people are concerned what the infringement on property rights will do to the economy, what it will do to wealth creation, and what it will do to their freedom of choice. People in the rural parts of Cypress Medicine Hat feel exactly the same way, and with some of the directives that are fairly subtle at this point, are concerned that if they have an alternate opinion or an alternate idea, they may not be able to find the avenue, they may not be able to find the possibility to sit down and discuss these things in a fair way with all Albertans and with access to due process if necessary. All three of these are coming together at the same time with this bill too, so I find that particularly interesting. One thing I find interesting in my initial days in sitting in this House is it makes me think of one of our implement dealers in Cypress Medicine Hat who has emailed me and called me very, very concerned about the transition allowance and very, very concerned about the doubling of the RSP amount. And of course that's a different story. But why I bring up this gentleman, he's quite an advertiser on the radio, and in my mind is entrenched his slogan, buy it right the first time. Buy it right the first time. And it makes me think of what some of my other colleagues have said earlier to the government side of the floor. This is your opportunity to get it right the first time. Please listen to what some of us are saying. Please feel free to steal our ideas. Please make Alberta a better place. In the case of this legislation we are debating tonight, I am hearing from Albertans that the intent of this bill is sound, yet there are some major concerns that need to be addressed to ensure its application does not negatively impact landowners, and that the government is not simply making these changes to consolidate their own power. Apparently we have we're concerned out there. The present regulatory system for oil and gas projects in our province is frustrating, in part because a company must apply to a variety of government entities and boards when seeking approval for a single project. And, Madam Speaker, I would not be surprised if a company is often required to submit the same information to various government agencies. I shared the plane back from Edmonton last Thursday night, and I sat with an executive of an oil company who was making a very generous donation to the Medicine Hat College. And he indicated to me sometimes over 200 applications for a single project. And nobody hates paperwork more than me, so I have quite a bit of empathy for the good employees and the good oil and gas entrepreneurs in our area that do that. This needless bureaucratic duplication costs industry millions in lost time and productivity, as well as lost wages of workers. In short, the economic growth of Alberta is sacrificed. Having one point of contact within the government for a company to deal with when submitting applications, as proposed in this legislation, Bill 2, makes sense if it's done right, and is something Albertans in the oil and gas industry have been asking for. We've heard lots from my colleagues tonight about what done right means, and again, I would ask you to get it right the first time. I'm concerned, Mr. Speaker, there is a rush to consolidate. Madam Speaker, I'm sorry, that there is a rush to consolidate. We'll skip over the deficiencies in the current system. As we've seen with Alberta Health Services and its consolidation from 16 regions to 9 to one big one. If you want to change a light bulb or get the parking fixed in Medicine Hat, you have to phone Red Deer, and it takes 10 days. Centralization is no cure-all. Sometimes it's worse than the disease. Alberta Health Services took health service delivery in this province backwards. Even to this day, the effects of centralization and rushed consolidation are being felt all across the province. The single window regulator the government is proposing must streamline regulations and eliminate needless duplication, not create more red tape, more unnecessary bureaucracy. And Madam Speaker, if the goal is to make the process more efficient, then I would also argue it should also make the system more cost efficient and not increase costs. The government needs to provide concrete evidence that they will not be creating more bureaucracy. Instead, they should be addressing deficiencies and eliminating this needless duplication, reducing red tape, and saving taxpayers' money by implementing a single window regulator system. I think this can work if it's done right. I heard many times, and I spoke many times during my campaign about Canadian Federation of Independent Business and the fact that they had put out only 3 provinces have, with a failing grade of D or less, have flunked the reduction of government bureaucracy and red tape. I believe it's 3 years in a row, might be 2, and sharing the dubious distinction with Manitoba and Prince Edward Island, unfortunately, is us, Alberta. And I remember reading somewhere this unnecessary regulation and red tape costs our economy $4 billion a year, money that can be used to generate income, wages, taxes, freedoms, quality of life. Mr. Speaker, I am concerned about how this legislation may affect landowners in my constituency, and indeed all landowners right across this great province. The track record of this government in terms of respecting the rights of landowners does not, I'm afraid, inspire much confidence. Bill 19, 36, 24, and 50. The amendments as opposed to the desire to get it right the first time. We know this government does not typically listen to landowners. Perhaps they simply do not understand landowners' concerns, or perhaps they simply do not care. For years, Wild Rose has been standing up and voicing the concern landowners bring to us. Sounds like the ND is doing that as well. And it seems we finally get government to move on one aspect. I like Section 63 and 64 of this legislation. I see Section 63 and 64 of this legislation as a positive development. These sections will allow landowners to voluntarily register any surface agreement they and an oil and gas firm have negotiated with the new regulator. The word voluntary is so nice to see in there, and I mean, in the time that I was involved in real estate and my land ownings, it's a frustration amongst landowners that the information isn't accessible to everybody, that neighbors are treated differently, that this industry seems to happen too fast, too quick, without their concerns in mind a lot of times. Providing information will go a long, long way to make that much more fair, much easier, and much more satisfying for all our landowners, so they too feel that they're a greater part in sharing in this prosperity of Alberta. By registering these agreements, the exploratory and production license of the oil and gas company will be subject to them fulfilling the elements of the agreement. Again, a way for the landowner to have a little more strength in the agreement, a way for the oil company to have to be a little more accountable. Accountability is normally good, and that should make it a much, much more prosperous way for us. And these sections also provide the new regulator with the power to enforce the conditions in surface agreements, so landowners will no longer have to deal with conflicts through the court system. Court system, my colleague from Medicine Hat touched on briefly. However, getting one thing right does not excuse this government for getting so many other things wrong when it comes to landowners' rights. I am certainly hearing from many landowners that they do not support this legislation because it actually takes away some avenues of appeal that are available to landowners within the current system.
Thank you, Honourable Member from Cypress Medicine Hat.